Today we're going to sew the Chameleon by Gecko. The Chameleon bag has many options for you to create whatever kind of pattern you want in the front. I decided to go with the simple top rectangle and bottom rectangle. I'm going to start by putting the top and bottom together to create the main panel. And then I will work on the straps. So to do this, you're going to grab the first set. I'm using this directional fabric, so I need to make sure that it is right sides together, but that it is facing down so that when I pull it up, it's facing the right way. See, it's pinned, and I'm going to sew on that pin edge and the seam allowance that is mentioned in the pattern. I'm going to prep this one as well, just so it's ready to go. Now that they are both prepped, I'm going to go ahead and sew them together. Make sure to backstitch in the beginning and the end. Alright, now that these are sewed together, I am going to go to the back and open these seams. If you do have a seam roller, it helps. Another little trick that you can use to keep these open is to put double-sided tape on each of these edges, and then you just tape it down, and then you can be sure that it's not going to move. So I'm actually going to tape it down to make sure it stays there. Both of my panels are prepped, so now I'm going to go to the machine and I'm going to top stitch on each of these panels 1/8 of an inch from this seam line on each side. So I'm going to do 1/8 of an inch on this side and then 1/8 of an inch on this side. Do this on both of your panels. Forgot to mention that I'm going to change my stitch length to a 5. I'm on an industrial, so if you're on a domestic, it's different. But I'm going to do a 5. Remember to backstitch beginning and end. And that's what it'll look like. I'm going to do my next panel. Both panels have been top stitched. Now I'm going to set these aside and work on the handles. Alright, so I went ahead and did a little prep work on these. On the other side, I marked the center of them. And what I'm going to do is that I'm going to put double-sided tape on this line, and I'm going to fold the edges to meet that tape, and so that they can stay down. Alright, so I'm making sure that it's very taped down. Now I'm going to take off the paper on the tape. Gets a little feisty with me sometimes. Now I'm going to fold these edges to meet that center mark that I did, so that they can stay down, or at least it'll help them stay down as best as it can. I'll probably end up putting some clips on here, just to keep it in place. At least it'll help me here and there so that it's not putting too much pressure on that tape. This is what my handle looks like right after I'm done putting those edges into the center with the tape. I'm going to do the same thing with the other one. I did decide to make the decorative accent on these straps. So what I did was that I cut some of my cotton woven so that I could put on top of this strap so that I could hide this line in the center. But in order to, I already prepped these, but in order to prep these, what you have to do is you have to fold in the edges of them. I did around like half of an inch. I folded it in half an inch from the edge, and then I ironed it down, and then I put the edges to the center of this so that all the raw edges would be secured in the middle. So now I just have to kind of center it here in a way, but I think I'm actually going to secure it down with tape. Tape is my best friend today. So I'm going to eyeball it and center it on my strap, and then I can proceed to sewing it onto the strap. This is what it ended up looking like. Now I'm going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch from the edge of the lining, and I'm going to do it all around to secure this on top of the strap. So here is what the strap looks like. So you can see it has been top stitched, and then it has been secured to the strap. So now the bottom side will have a little decorative little strip of fabric. I'm going to go ahead and do the same on the other strap, and then we will continue. Okay, the straps are ready, and I will put them to the side. Now we're going to work on the main outside zipper. So I'm going to use this panel for the front. So I will put the zipper on the back panel. On the pattern piece, there is a marking for the zipper. So grab your pattern piece and mark it on your main fabric. And go ahead and grab your outer zip pocket pattern pieces. Okay, so I had grabbed both of my lining pieces, but we only need one. So just grab one of the pieces, put the other one to the side. And then I'm going to mark the zipper rectangle on the back side or the wrong side of the pocket lining. There are marks on the pattern piece showing you where to put the rectangle and giving you the outline, but I'm going to use one of my zipper rulers from Mormino just because it's easier for me to do so. And I am going to mark the lines for my zipper. My erasable marker. I only mark the long lines because that's what I sew on there. I don't sew these areas over here. Just because it turns better that way, in my opinion at least. So I am going to mark it with the marking that I had made here for the bottom. I'm just gonna eyeball it. Don't be like me and mark your centers. I will mark the center right after I'm done with this. I'm just gonna eyeball the zipper, but here we go. So you're going to sew this piece onto your main panel, right sides together. So this is wrong side up, right side up. And you're going to sew on the rectangle for your zipper. Now that I've sewn these together, I am going to mark a center line in between the zipper lines that I had just sewn. So I'm going to mark right in between here. I'm going to make 2 little triangles on the ends of this. You could eyeball it, you could use measurements. I have this other tool by Idle Blooms that has this center, so I like to use that. Alright, so now that it's marked, you're going to cut this line in between up until the little triangle point, and then you're going to cut onto that triangle on both sides. Some people like to use their seam ripper. I like to use the seam ripper, but I prefer using scissors just because I feel like it's better for me. You use whatever you feel is better for you, but this is how I do it. I do that initial cut, and then I go in with my scissors. Try to cut as close as you can to the thread without cutting your thread. Please be very careful and don't cut your thread. So now you are left with this. See, I cut as close as I could to that thread. So now you're going to grab this fabric and put it in through that hole you just cut, and see how it folds in or out. Sorry. You just bring it all to the back. Because I am using cotton woven, I will be able to go to my iron board and actually iron this down because it's giving me some resistance. You want to be able to just see the outside fabric and see no lining fabric on there. I am going to go to my iron and I'm going to iron this down, and I'll show you what it's supposed to look like before I lose my mind. Nah. I'll show you what it's supposed to look like after I iron it. I'll be right back. Alright, I'm back from the ironing board. This is what it's supposed to look like. So your fabric is laying very nicely. So now we just need to grab our zipper and put it over here. I have my zipper, and what we want to do is put the zipper behind here and center it. I like to use tape for this just because it definitely makes it easier for me. There's people who cut the zipper tape a little bit longer and they can clip it because they don't like using tape. Because I cut the tape longer than the hole for the zipper, I didn't have to put tape all over to the edges, so I just put it on the center area. Another important detail. Because I want my zipper to open from left to right, I need to make sure that the open part of the zipper is going to that left side. Okay, now that my zipper is in place and being held by that tape, I'm going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch from this edge so I can secure my zipper onto the bag. Alright, that has been top stitched in place. It looks like that from behind. So I'm going to cut the zipper to be a little bit closer to the lining. Alright, so now you're going to grab your other lining piece and you're going to put it right side down with your other piece. and you're going to clip it in place because we are going to sew all around this so that we can close up that zipper pocket. Okay, now that I've sewn all around there, we have our zipper pocket. Now I'm going to put on the connectors for the straps that go on this bag. I decided to make hidden connectors, so I'm going to show you how I do that. There's markings on the pattern piece on where those connectors should go. So I'm going to use those markings to mark my main panels, and then I'm going to come back and do the other cuts that I need to do to make them into the hidden connectors. The way that I am doing these hidden connectors, I learned from Lynn's Handmade. And essentially you make the marks on the pattern, and you essentially create like this little shape where this line is almost 1 inch, and then you create like little offset lines that are almost 1/4. The trick to this is that you don't want it to be too open, because then like it'll just be a really big hole and you don't want it to be that way. So I have already cut in to my pieces with an X-Acto knife, and I made them in that shape. For my handles, I cut out these 4 pieces, which are, I think they're 2 inches. Let me see. They are 2 inches. And for my connectors, I will use these double connectors. This will be on the bag, and this is where the handle will be coming out of. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to prep these pieces just like I did with the handles. Now that all my straps are prepped, it is time to add them onto the bag. I forgot to mention how long these are. I'm so sorry about that. So these are almost 4 inches long. That's obviously preference, but I prefer them to be on the longer side so that I have enough to sew. So I would suggest you go on for like almost 4 inches long. So it would be 2 by 4. So now it's time to sew it on your bag. So find the hole, and with the connectors with the center line on the top, you're going to find that hole and slip them in. And you want it to be kind of snug. Obviously not to the point where it's going to break your bag or anything like that. And then you're going to put it into like halfway, so that when it's time to put this inside, you'll have enough to put your connector on there. You're going to flip it, and then ideally you want to sew only in here. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to actually mark 1 inch right here so that I make sure that I don't pass from that 1 inch, because if I do, you'll be able to see it on the other side, and we don't want that. So now we are going to sew from this end to this end as close as we can to this, but not too close. So I would say 1/8 of an inch. So we're going to sew from here to here without going farther from those edges. Now that we've sewn that part over here, it looks like this on the front. And we're going to grab our connector. We're going to slide it in. And now this edge is going to go in as well. And it's a little tricky, but as it goes in to this side, that little tab that is up front will go to the back along with this piece. As you can see, that little tab went to the back along with the vinyl piece. And obviously I'm going to tug this, but not to the point where it's like breaking the fabric, but I'm going to tug it as much as I can so that it's clean on the front. And I'm going to go to my sewing machine, and in the back, I'm going to flip this like that. And I'm going to sew on that tab alongside with everything else so that it's secure. Just be sure to keep this out of the way so that it doesn't obviously get sewn. Because then once we're done sewing that, once we flip it back up, that's what it will look like. So I'm going to do that and then I'll be back. That is sewn in place. As you can see, because this is cotton woven, I am going to add some fray check on this right here just to be safe. I'm going to do it all around the edges for that. Alright, so that is how you do the hidden connector with that technique. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on this side and on the other panel as well. The connectors have been installed. You have the option of riveting these down if you want to, but I'm going to skip on that this time, but it does create extra security for your bag. Now we're going to work on the inside slip pocket if you're going to add this to your bag. So you're going to grab your two pieces and you're going to put them right sides together. We are going to pin these to keep them in place. So what we're going to do is that we are going to sew through all of these sides to create the slip pocket, but we're going to leave an opening at the bottom. So I'm just going to leave, I'm eyeballing this, but just enough for my hand to like come in here. And we are going to sew from this line over here, up here, across, and down, and we're going to stop on the other line, leaving this hole in the bottom so that we can actually turn it right side out. Now that I've sewn this together, I'm going to cut down on the edges, and I'm also going to cut diagonal on these corners just so when they flip they come out nicely. I'm not going to cut down on this edge because I still need to sew this closed when we have it right side out. So we are going to flip this right side out. So when we flip it, we are left with this cute little thing. So make sure that your edges are popped out as much as you can. I like to usually do this because it like forces the edge out. You can also go to your ironing board once you're done popping out the edges and give it a good press. So what we have to do next is we're going to do a top stitch on the top side of that pocket, which is the one that is closed and not the one that is open. So we're going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch from the edge. Okay, so I have placed my pocket with that measurement that she mentions in the pattern, and you're going to place it, and now you're going to tack it down onto that main lining panel. So we're going to sew on this edge, and then we're going to sew on the bottom edge, and that will close that hole that we have, and then we're going to go back up. Remember to back stitch on the beginning and end of that pocket so that is very secure. Do not sew on the top because then you won't have a pocket. Now that our pocket is installed, we are going to put this to the side. Now it's time to work on the side pockets. I decided to just do the simple side pockets without the other small pocket that she has on the pattern. So we're going to grab the exterior fabric and the lining fabric, and we're going to put it right sides together. Now we're going to go to the machine and we're going to sew on the top edge of this pocket and on the bottom edge of this pocket with the seam allowance that she mentions in the pattern. We're going to do the same thing for both of these. Now that we've sewn them together, I'm going to cut down the sewn edges just a little bit. And now we're going to flip them right side out. Being careful not to break them. Now that they are right sides out, I am going to kind of put some pressure on that top edge with my fingers. And I'm going to go to the machine and I'm going to top stitch on the top edge. Now that we've done the top stitching on the side pockets, we are going to grab the main side gussets and we are going to align these pockets. There is a mark that we have to do on the gusset. It's mentioned on the pattern, so I'm going to do that now. We are going to align the side pocket onto that mark and we're going to pin it in place. Now that they have been pinned, I'm going to go to the machine and baste these together at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and I'm going to baste on these 3 edges. Now that we've finished these pockets, we are going to put them to the side. Now we're going to work on the recessed zipper. I have my recessed zipper panels and I have my main zipper. So we're going to grab our zipper and on the side where it opens, we're going to separate it. And we need to turn these edges to 90 degrees, like that. Some people like to sew. I prefer to use the lighter method, which I'm going to show you. For that, you're going to need a lighter. And what we're going to do is that we're going to fold these edges so that they meet as best as they can. I still need a bit more on that edge. When I folded this edge, I can see that the top and the sides are meeting. So I'm going to grab a clip. I'm going to clip it so that it doesn't move from there. Now I'm going to grab my lighter and I'm going to put some fire on here so it melts those edges. I'm going to wait a little bit and blow on it a little bit, and then you should not be burning your fingers while you're doing this. But I'm going to press it. It's cool to the touch, and I have to see. I'm going to give it a little bit more because I don't think it went together, but I'm going to give it a little bit more. I'm going to press it and let's see. And it works out. So now that they are melted together and it won't move from there. I'm going to repeat the same thing on the other side. That's how I kind of measure it. I'm also going to secure the back part of the zipper. Now my zipper is ready for the recessed panels. So I'm going to grab my panels, and I decided to use the wide version of these because I had enough fabric, but she has an option if you don't have enough fabric where you can cut different strips. So we're going to grab our finished zipper and one of our panels, and we're going to make some markings. These markings are on the pattern. Once you've done your markings, you're going to align that zipper to those edges with those markings. I think I'm going to use some tape on here just to make sure it does not shift for me. I'm not going to go down all the way on my zipper because this part of the zipper is going to be out of the panel. So I'm just going to prep and do the same thing on the other side because we're going to have to repeat this. So with my panel right side down, I'm going to align my zipper with those lines that have been marked. So wrong side with wrong side. I'm gonna do that. Because the line is a little wonky to kind of like figure out, I decided to use my zipper tape's markings. It has like some markings right next to the teeth. So I decided to align it to that line. I don't know if it's probably a little bit difficult to see, but my zipper tape has that line. So I decided to align my recess panel to that marking. So I'm going to grab my handy dandy tape again, and I'm going to put some tape on the top side of my zipper tape so that when I do this, it can be aligned properly. So I've put tape on the top part. I'm going to take that tape off. Not the tape. I'm going to take the paper off. And I'm going to align this other long edge with the other long edge of the panel. Now that this is secured with the tape, I am going to top stitch on all 4 edges of this panel. Now that we've done that on this side, we're going to repeat the same process on the other side. Now that our zipper panel is finished, it is time to add our zipper tab. So we are going to fold our zipper tab in half. We're going to place it on the end of our zipper. I'm going to clip it in place. And what we're going to do is that we're going to sew around all 4 edges to secure it in place. Now that we've finished our zipper panel, we are going to grab a main lining and also the main lining overlay. We are going to align the midpoint of the zipper panel with the midpoint of the main lining. And once we do that, we grab some clips, secure it in place. And the zipper panel is laying wrong side to right side, so it's right on top of that lining. So we're gonna grab our main lining overlay and we're going to put it right side down. So we're gonna be looking at the wrong side of it. And we are going to clip it along with our zipper panel and our main lining. Now that I've got them pinned in place, I'm going to go to my sewing machine and I'm going to sew them with our regular seam allowance on this top line right here. Now that we've put these together, we are going to lift this up, and we're also going to lift up the zipper panel, but it does say that the seam allowance, this bit right here, needs to be facing up, so facing up with the panel. So I'm going to do that top stitch and be watchful that it doesn't flip back down. Okay, so that is done. I have done my top stitching and my seam allowance is facing up. So now we're going to repeat the same steps on the other panel. Now that we've put our zipper with the main lining, it is time to close up the bottom of the lining panels. In the pattern, she has some markings to suggest the size of the opening to leave. So what we're gonna do is we're going to pin the bottom of the lining just to keep it safe, and we're going to stop at these markings when we're sewing. So I've sewn that together, and this is the hole where we're going to turn our bag in the end. So I'm going to set this to the side for now. Now we're going to work with the lining gusset and the gusset lining overlays. So we are going to put these right side together, and we are going to pin this in place. And now we're going to go to the machine and we're going to top stitch on this side so we can connect them together with our regular seam allowance. Now that we've put these together, we are going to open it up and we're going to work on that seam allowance, and we're going to open it, keeping them open. We're going to go to the machine and we are going to do top stitching on this edge and on this edge. This is what it will look like in the end. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with my other piece. Now that my lining gussets and gusset lining overlays are put together, she has some measurements that you have to mark on the wrong side of the lining gusset. So I have already done these marks, but I'm going to put one of them to the side, and I'm going to bring in the main lining that has already been assembled with the zipper. And we're gonna work on the side of them, and I should open the zipper just so it's easier to work it. And we should have the midpoints marked on these. I always forget to do that. So we are going to align that midpoint with the seam from the lining, and we are going to pin it in place. From here, we're going to sew from this line to the other line with our regular seam allowance. Now that we've sewn this together, we are going to grab a pair of scissors and we are going to flip this. So we are looking at the wrong side of the main lining. And we are going to make some cuts on the lining going from the bottom up to those seams that we just did on both sides. Just be careful not to cut too close to that because you don't want to cut what you just sewed. So I am going to move the gusset lining out of the way, and I'm going to make some quick snips. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to move that out of the way. I'm going to make some quick cuts. And now we are left with the lining being cut. So now that we've done that, we are going to grab our lining gusset and we are going to put it together with the lining gusset on the top of the main lining. We're going to pin it all. And we are just grabbing these corners and pinning them together. It'll end up looking like this. You see that little cut that we made is allowing the lining and the gusset to come together. So we are going to sew this whole edge up until this point right here in which we had made the cut with our regular seam allowance. Now that that edge has been sewn together, I'm going to repeat the same process on the other edge. Now that these are put together, we're going to repeat that same process on this other side. On this side, just make sure that your zipper and your zipper tab are out of the way so you don't accidentally sew it together. I have sewn the edges to the lining, so now it's basically ready. So I'm going to put it to the side. Now I'm going to bring in my outside main panels, and we are going to put them right sides together. And we are going to align the bottom edges and we are going to clip them together. Make sure that it's all aligned on the sides and bottom. Now that it's pinned, I'm going to sew at our seam allowance all along the bottom edge. Now that it is sewn together, we are going to open it up, wrong side up, and we are going to open the seam, and we are going to top stitch on the outside 1/8 from that seam on this side, 1/8 from the seam on this side. Now that we've done the top stitching on the seam, we are going to grab this and put it to the side. So now it's time to grab the base of the bag and make sure that the short edges have the midpoints marked in them. And I've already put the stabilizer on here. It's a little wonky. It's a little off to the side, so make sure that yours is not wonky like mine. In the pattern, she states that we have to fold the long edges towards the center of the bag. She suggests clipping them in place. I think I'm going to use some tape so that it doesn't fold out on me. Because it's wonky, I have to figure out how I'm going to do this edge. And I'll probably have to redo the midpoints or mark them differently because this is just leaning on this side. So don't be like me and just stabilize it in the center, how you should. But yeah, I'm going to make this work. So now we are going to grab our main panel again, and we are going to align these center marks with the center seam of our main panels. And we are literally going to just put this right on top of our main panel. So aligning that with the center seam, we are going to clip the short edges. So now that I have my base secured onto my main panels with the short edges, and those midpoints are aligned with the center seam of our main panels, I'm going to top stitch all around the 4 edges at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I am going to start on one of the short edges just so my back stitch is hidden when the bag is formed in the end. Now that the base is attached to the main outer panel, I'm going to actually attach my logo on it, my bag tag. I forgot to do that before, so I think I'm going to attach it right here. So let me do that real quick. Now that I've installed my bag tag, I wanted to show you that I actually taped down the extra, I wanted to show you that I taped down the excess of the connectors on here just so they wouldn't be loose. I just used Gorilla Tape. I used duct tape as well to protect where my bag tag is installed. Did the same thing for the other 2 connectors. Just wanted to show you that I did that so that it wouldn't be just flopping around everywhere. Okay, so now that I've done that, I am going to install the side pockets of the bag. Now that I've marked those midpoints, you have to decide whether you want your pockets to be facing with this towards the back or this towards the back. So I want them to be facing with the higher edge to the back of the bag. So I want this one on this side. So we're going to align the short edges. This is the same process that we did with the lining. So we're going to align the short edges along with the midpoints. And just because I want to make sure. Yep. Just like that. So we are going to do those same markings on here, and we're going to do the whole sewing from one line to the other. I'm going to go ahead and do that. So now I'm going to go to the machine and put these together from this line to this line. Now that that's together, just like before, we are going to flip the main panels, and we are going to grab our scissors, and we are moving that gusset off to the side, and we are going to create the little marking we're going to cut, if we can. There we go. Same thing on this end, and it's the same process as before. We're going to align those top edges, and we're going to clip them. So now that I've got it clipped, I'm going to sew just like we did before, from the top to that bottom marking. Now that I've done that, I'm going to check it to make sure that there aren't any gaps. Checking with my finger, I don't see any gaps. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other edge. So now this side is done, we're going to repeat the same process on the other side. I finished sewing the pockets onto my main outer bag. So now I'm going to turn this right side out. When you're turning this, just be careful with your edges and push on them gently, just so they like fall into place, but not enough so that your vinyl just rips or tears or something. Now that we've flipped it, we grab our completed lining, and we are going to put the outside inside our lining, making sure that the front part is facing the front part of the bag. So I'm going to place it with my zipper is on the right, it opens to the right, so I'm going to place the front side of my bag, I'm going to place it just like that. Make sure you put the corners with the corners, just so it's as flat as possible. Make sure your connectors are folded to the inside so you don't accidentally sew them. If you want, you can use some tape, like some masking tape or something, to tape them down. I'm not going to do that because I always go by feel with my bags. It gets a little bit tricky with the zipper on here, so what I just did, I just pushed the zipper panels down so that I have full access to the top part so that I can clip along this whole edge. First thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to match up the lining edges with the main outer bag edges, and I'm going to nest these seams. So I'm going to make this seam go this way and the inside bag seam go that way. That way they are nested and it creates a little bit less bulk when I am putting it together. On this side it's a little tricky because the zipper is pretty short. Probably next time that I do this bag I'll make the zipper a bit longer, but I will do the same thing. Now that my bag is clipped at the top, I'm gonna go to the machine and sew it with the seam allowance stated in the pattern. I think I'm gonna start on one of these edges and I'm gonna continue all around. I'm sorry if the view is not the best, but I do have to maneuver the bag. Looks a little bit weird over here, but it's because of the zipper. So that hole that we left in the lining is going to be our hole where we're going to pull our bag from this. So be patient and start grabbing your bag from one of the edges and start pulling it out. Now that it's right side out, I am going to roll these edges with my fingers. just so they are as together as they can be. It's a little bit trickier with this side over here because the fabrics are like a little bit on the thinner side, but it can still be done. And once you're done that, you're going to clip those edges so that they stay there. Okay, now that I've pinned the top part of this, I'm going back to the machine and I'm going to top stitch all around this top edge. I am probably going to start top stitching from the back, somewhere where I can hide that back stitch. I'll probably start around here, but yes, just so it's all clear on the front side of the bag. I'm going to top stitch with my bag like this. So just if you have the connectors like that, just again make sure that they're out of the way so that you don't end up sewing over them. That's not going to be fun. Now what's left is to put on the straps. What I have to do is put it on this edge and bring it up as far as I want to. I will probably, let me pin this first. I will probably end up putting some rivets on here because I don't want to make sewing lines on it. If you are installing strap ends on it, you want to make sure you put the strap in through your connector first, because the strap end usually makes it way too hard for you to put it in after you've done that. I have folded this over for 1.25 inches. I'm going to use my hole puncher to make the holes around here for the rivets. I'll probably do it from the back side so I can make sure that it's being grabbed on, but I'll probably do it around here, close to this, so that there's enough space for the strap ends to get on here. Okay, I'm sorry about the lighting, but I did find the strap ends, and I just wanted to show you real quick how that install goes. So these are the strap ends that I have. They do have the holes for the little screws on the back. So what I do is that I slide it from the side onto the strap, and then I make sure that obviously it's caught. The little tiny screws that are very difficult to work with, if I'm being honest, and a little screwdriver. And there we go, it's installed. My apologies, I got too excited about finishing the bag that I forgot we have an opening on the lining that we need to close. So take your lining out of the bag, and this is a good opportunity to make sure that all the edges are the way that you want them to be, so you can still, you know, finagle with it if you want to. But yes, you need to put those edges that are like poking out, you need to turn them in and then put them together and clip them so that we can sew them. I'm going to also add a little tag to the bottom of the bag. To close the lining, you just have to sew from that open edge all up to the other open edge. I don't have any green thread or gold thread, so I am just going to use this rainbow thread. So it'll just mask a little bit better. I didn't want to use the shocking red on there. Now that I've changed my thread, I'm going to top stitch on the lining so I can close it up. Now we are actually done. So now that that is sewn, put it back into your bag. And now she is finished. Thank you so much for joining me in this sew along. I really hope it helps you make your own chameleon bag. Let me know if you have questions in the comments and I'll be as helpful as I can be. Thanks so much. I'll see you in the next one.